Hi everyone, welcome back. But first of all, I thought I'd show you these little bags that I've made. So I've just made 4 of them this morning and popped them into my Etsy shop, and they are a bag to hold a junk journal. So I haven't got a journal, but I do have a bit of a signature here, and you can put it in like that. Now this one just ties up and goes through, but then the other 3 are in the green. So this is in the red, white and blue theme. Got a pretty back on it too. It's just all of the unused scraps of quilting fabric that I had, and I've made them up, and they're all lined as well, so you can see that fresh off the machine. There's still a bit of thread hanging around there, but they're all lined, and you can pop your junk journal in. So all of the measurements are in the Etsy shop, and you can bring it to here, but you could also have a smaller journal just by folding it over like that. So that's the only red, white and blue one at the moment. And then because I have lots of quilting fabrics in my favourite colour of green, I've managed to get enough, and probably more still, to make a lot in the green. So this is this one, and then the back of it is like that. And these ones fold over, and for this I've done a ribbon. So you can actually tie it up once your junk journal is in there into a bow, or whatever you want. And they're quite big, so they will fit a reasonable size, you know, 2 signature journal in them, you know, 9 by 8 or something like that. I've got all the measurements, as I said, on the store. So that's another one, again all lined. And with these ones I have also added that lace across there. So that's the second one. And then I've got this one. As you can see, it's all in the similar tones, and these are just all the different quilts that I've made over the last couple of years, and quite pretty fabrics. Well, I think that they're quite pretty because I love these colours. So that's another one. Some of them are slightly different sizes. A couple are bigger than others. For example, this one here, this is 1/2 inch bigger that way, and probably about the same this way. So it's a bigger one, so just work out what you need if you're interested in them. But I thought that they were quite pretty, and something to store your journal in. You put a lot of effort into it, and you don't really want to end up with it getting full of dust. So I've made quite a few of these for myself, and I enjoy making them, which is why I thought I'd make a few more this morning and pop them into the shop. So I will put the link below to that section in the shop. Okay, I've had to turn the lights on because the rain's coming, and it's very, very dark, and thunder as well. Now, yesterday I was talking to my sisters on WhatsApp, and while I did that, I was unpicking a curtain that I'd made for myself a couple of years ago, and I'd made it all out of doilies, and this is actually a bit of lace that was on the bottom of it, but it was just too heavy, and I thought maybe with the fabrics that I've got left now, and I'll add some more. You can see this is all them there. I have unpicked everything, and some of it ripped, but that's okay. They'll be great for using as edges in junk journals. But what I thought I'll do with all that fabric is I'll actually make a quilt. So it won't have any thickness to it. It'll just be the doilies. And hopefully I will do that because I've got a real sewing bug on at the moment. But with this piece, which is the bottom piece of the lace, I'm going to make a cover for a journal, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's going to be really super easy, even if you don't know how to quilt. Now, quilt is a weird term because what I do is I don't actually quilt. I do what's called piecing, which is I put the pieces of the fabric, so I chop it up and then I put it back together. That's the piecing step. The actual quilting step is when you take your machine and you quilt and do all those swirly patterns and things all over it. Now, I don't particularly like that, so I never really quilt. I only ever do what's called stitch in the ditch, which is where the fabric joins. I run a row of stitching down so it catches the back through the quilt top, which is your pretty top, made out of usually some sort of pretty fabric, your batting, which is the center in the sandwich, and your quilt back. So that's what I normally do, is just quilt in the ditch. But the other thing that I've done, and quite successfully, is I've done quilt as you go, which means that after your piece is finished, you don't then have to run it through the machine and do all the quilting on it, even if you just stitch in the ditch. And that's what I'm going to do today. Well, that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do today. So let's see how this turns out. So I've cut a piece of fabric, and as you can see, I just had my journal here and I've wrapped it over, and it's probably going to be a bit too big, but I don't know if I'll leave it. I might chop it down a little bit. The danger of chopping it down is then you end up with something that is way too small, but I will take a few inches off this end in my usual very measured style. And then I've got the pretty fabrics, and I got these when I was in Europe. Pretty sure you can buy them anywhere. They're a mode of fabric and they're really sweet. They've got cute little things on them. I really like the little ties, like they're a bow tie on this one. I think it goes that way, and also the little leaves and things. So that's what I'm using. So how I'm going to do this is I've got my backing fabric and my batting, and I'm going to turn that over so it faces down. And the quilt top part is going to be here, and it's going to be quite easy. These are all still folded, which have been sitting there for more than a year now, so it's probably time to use them. And I'm just going to chop them as I need them into strips. Now you can hand cut this, because all of that is going to be hidden once we start doing it on top, doing the quilt as you go method. Or if you've got a quilt ruler and a rotary cutter, then put it on your mat and cut it. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'll just hand cut that out. I'm going to start with that piece. Now I'm cutting it that wide so that I can get the little pictures that are on it, because it's got some really cute little photographs and things on it. And this one is the same. And I guess with these ones here, I can do that as well. I'll take these self edges off first. So what you need to do is to start with a strip. So I'll start with this one. It doesn't really matter which one. And I'm going to do mine diagonally. You can do it straight up and down. Now let me see if I want to do that. Oh no, I think I can do it straight up and down. But because I'm doing it up and down, I need to get it in the right way. Okay? So you put one strip. Don't worry that it's longer. And you put one strip down, and you take your next strip and you lay it on top. Now you can pin along here if you want to, but I just don't pin. So if you want to pin along there, go for it. But I'm just going to lay them so that these raw edges on the right are together. I'm not worrying about the left. They happen to be the same size, but you might hit one that's not. So don't worry about the left hand side. And then we'll trim these like this now. And then go to the sewing machine and stitch down here about 1/4 inch from the edge. So what I've done is I've sewn that down and then iron it over. You need to iron every step, unfortunately. I know, but I'll show you the back. It's just put a line of stitching down there. And then on the front, take your next piece and line up those edges again. And now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew that one as well. And then what I've done is I've sewn that again and just ironed it across. And now I've got 2 stitched lines down here. And I can keep going. Now if you want some variation in this, then just cut your strips so that they're not as thick. Let's see if I've got something I cut smaller here. I'm going to put this down here and then stitch down, and then I'm going to do a couple more so you can see how it develops. Okay, I've done this whole side now. There's some things I just want to tell you if I haven't already done so. First of all, when you're doing this, you need to iron between every time that you put a strip on. You have to go and iron it back. If you don't, when you come to iron it back, you'll find that you've got little bunch, you know, your fabric's not stretched out enough across the piece. And for somebody like me who doesn't like the tedium of doing that, I still do that every time I stitch a piece. Now with this, it means every time I stitch I have to jump up. if you're doing a whole quilt, you can kind of do the next one on each block and then jump up. So it's not as bad when you're doing a whole quilt. And I've done a very large quilt in this method, or diagonally, but still using this method, and I didn't find it tedious at all. So this is what I've done to date. So I've gone through, that's the skinny piece, and then I've done this one again, but I didn't repeat this one because then that looks a bit too matchy if you just sort of repeat. You can, but I didn't like that. I've gone back to this one and I've cut it quite wide this time. Now, you're probably thinking, why didn't she start on the left and work her way across? Again, if you start on the edge of something in fabric, it will skew as you work across, and always when you're quilting you start in the center. So even when you're doing your final quilt on top of your pieced sandwich, you always start in the center and work out from there, because it stops those bunches of fabrics happening. So now how are you going to do the next one is with this one, you're just going to turn it round. So with this next one, I'm probably going to go with these flowers, I think. And when I fold it over, I'd like the flowers to be facing the same direction. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe because this would be probably the back of the book, I might want them up the other way. But just be aware, say if I'm using this one, I'd have to stitch it on upside down, because if I stitch it on this way, I'm going to have one up one way and one up the other. That's the only thing to be aware of if you're doing this. When you do one side and turn it over, turn it around, you need to then have everything up the right way. So I'll just go and finish this off and I'll show you the end result of this first stage. So this is the piece that is now finished, and it's nice and thick because I've quilted it in the middle, or I've added the batting in the middle, I should say, and you can see the lines down there are varying widths. Now anyone could do this. If I can do this, I think anybody who can sew a straight line can do this. And yes, of course you could just use a piece of solid fabric and make a journal cover out of it, but I just think that this is a little bit special to have something that's, you know, in all these really pretty little fabrics, and I think it's going to make a really nice journal. I don't know, I might even put it on this one, make this one, and I will be sewing some more stuff on the inside, so don't worry about how rough it looks at the moment. Now I'm also going to have plenty that I've done. I was going to put another strip on, but that looks plenty wide enough to me. So in the next video I will show you how to square this up and then how to put a binding on in my my quick and easy method for binding, which is again I think something that anybody could do. I've got it upside down, I just realized. So this is the right way up. Now just be careful if you're using a very strong color like that red, which is really popping out, but luckily when I fold that over it's probably going to hit the spine, so I'm going to have a little bit on this side and a little pop on that side. The rests are quite sort of pastel-y, aren't they? Or not pastel-y as much as in the, you know, the different colors with more of a white background, and even this one is not as popped out as the red one. So that's the only sort of thing I think you need to be careful of. And don't iron your batting directly onto your batting. It's not made to be ironed on. Always iron on the fabric and stop before you get to the batting. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you like my bags, and I hope you like the beginnings of my quilted journal cover, and I will see you tomorrow when I'll finish it off. This is Deborah. Thanks for watching. Cheers.